let's start with Georgia. We just had a really exciting commitment here on the On3 Recruits channel. Ekene Agboko, a top 100 recruit, committed to Georgia. Georgia's 6th top 100 recruit of this cycle. What's next for the Dogs on that offensive line? Are they done?
Yeah, I mean, they hope not. I mean, they're going to add more. I would say you have to go and try to probably start with Malachi Lee, a monster of a human from out in Hawaii. Him and his family were back in Athens for the second time in the last couple of months, this past weekend for an unofficial visit this time. And I think, to me, that speaks volumes about where Georgia's at on that list for Lee and his family. Obviously, he's a top guy for Georgia. We feel Georgia's one of his top schools as well. He'll be at Michigan this weekend for an OV. We think Texas is a strong player in this race. And you have Alabama right there as well. As those 4 schools, we think he commits sometime likely in July, if not, late June, but sometime in the next week or two as well. And he's a very high priority for Georgia. Then, a guy that was there with him last weekend on an official visit for him was Brett Colajay, a kid out of Colorado, moved down to play at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. He'll be at Tennessee this weekend. Ohio State showed him a great time in Columbus 2 weeks ago. But we think Miami and Georgia are and really have been setting the pace in this race. USC's trying to hang around as well. But from my sources, it is neck and neck between Miami and Georgia at the top of this list. We think, at one time he wanted to take this thing into the season, maybe see some games, but we think Brett probably decides sometime this summer, likely in July, and it would be a surprise if it's not Georgia or Miami.
Yeah, here we are sitting at June 18th, and, to think 5 or 6 weeks from now, I mean, this Georgia class is going to be basically done. I mean, there'll be a couple spots left to fill, but there's more to come. Let's start with Georgia target safety, Tyreek Green. Is this one trending in the Dogs' direction as well?
Yeah, he was back on campus at Georgia this past weekend as well. And yes, I do like where Georgia sits, and I have liked Georgia's position in this race for months. For me, when I hear the buzz behind the scenes that he is Kirby's guy, I've had multiple sources tell me that Kirby is playing a big role in his recruitment, that Kirby, Glenn Schumann, that staff, Travaris Robinson, Dante Williams, all love what he brings Green to the table. From a versatile DB, he plays at Buford High School, close friends with KJ Bold, and spent a lot of time with KJ on the OV this past weekend. But he'll be at Florida State this weekend coming up. We think Miami is a competitor in this recruitment as well. Auburn's had him on campus too, but we think they all, if they want to get Tyreek Green, have to figure out a way to knock Georgia off the top.
Okay, let's stay on the defensive side of the ball with edge Kamari Brooks. Yesterday, you reported some big news. He eliminated a bunch of teams. It's down to 2, Bama or Georgia, and we got a commitment coming up on Monday. How do you read this one?
Yeah, he reminds me a little bit of like Brett Colajay, where, we've had a lot of other schools in the mix with Brett, and then with Kamari, the same. Clemson at one time was a competitor, then it was Texas, and it was USC, but we always knew the 2 constant that were there with Alabama and Georgia, 2 SEC foes, 2 of the top programs in the country that compete for SEC and national championships year in and year out. Look, I think Georgia is going to be hard to beat. I will say this, though, with that I think Bama has made this closer and tighter than a lot of people thought they would, being that he has connections to Georgia. He's been to Georgia 15-plus times. He lives just a few miles from University of Georgia campus right there in Bogart. So, look, a lot of things favor Georgia. We do like their position just a few days away from that announcement, but you cannot sleep, on Alabama. We just like where Georgia sits today, and we think they'll be tough to beat on Monday. But it's been a pretty tight race over the last couple of months, with Bama giving him a lot to think about. But Georgia, again, has a great chance to keep a very talented kid, in their backyard at home next week.
Yeah, and we're going to be hosting that one right here on the On3 Recruits channel, so make sure you guys are subscribed. All right, we're going to switch over to the offensive side of the ball. I want to talk about 5-star tight end Kaden Prothrow, because he was at Georgia the weekend that Mark Bowman Georgia's other top tight end target, committed to USC. So all the focus went to Kaden Prothrow, but he didn't pop to Georgia that weekend and has since been taking visits. So where do you see Kaden Prothrow in Georgia at this moment?
Yeah, Prothrow will do things on his timeline the way he likes to do it, just very slow, lethargic. He takes the process very seriously, and every visit is big for him and his family. And with him, he's not a big talker, so you have to kind of dig through different sources, that people either in his circle, people that know his people in his circle, and try to piece it all together. But nothing has told me anything different than Georgia remains the team to beat. He's been to Florida, he's been to Auburn, he's been to Alabama. He goes to Texas this next weekend. That's one that we're watching very closely. Texas came in a little bit later in the process, got him on campus for the first time in Austin this spring, and we feel the Longhorns are definitely a contender here. But again, it's kind of common talking about these guys, all have to go through the in-state school, and that's Georgia. Georgia has the longest relationship with Todd Hartley leading the way in the tight ends room. He's an in-state kid. He's been to Georgia way more than anywhere else, 10-plus times. His family knows the staff. We know, obviously, what Georgia does with tight ends and their offensive scheme under Mike Bobo. So, look, they have a very good one committed in Lincoln Keys. They love him as well. They would love nothing more than to add Kaden Prothrow to this class as well.
All right, one more Georgia target on the offensive side of the ball. Jay Lamar, this one's interesting because running back Jay Lamar visited Miami last weekend. We talked with Steven Wagner from Cane Sport, and he thought that the Canes really made a move. However, it's Georgia's turn this weekend, official visit. Jay Lamar is going to be in Athens. How do you see this recruitment? Is this a pivotal weekend?
Very pivotal, I think, for Georgia. Look, I think he's been Georgia's top running back, for some time. I mean, obviously, Savion Hyder, you can talk about him being the elite kid in this class too, but just being realistic, talking Georgia's chances, and who Georgia really likes is Jay Lamar. He's an in-state kid from Colquitt County, and look, we saw a kid like Usmani Cromah, who we thought would end up at Georgia from South Georgia this past cycle in 2025, go to Florida State on signing day. So nothing's ever a slam dunk in recruitment, and Georgia got on him early in the fall last year. He's been there numerous times. He has a great connection with Coach Crawford and Kirby Smart and company at Georgia, but Miami is a real threat to the in-state program in Athens, Georgia. Georgia wants Jay Lamar. I think Jay Lamar really likes Georgia, but Miami is giving him a lot to think about from his time there earlier this spring to the OV as well. Clemson remains another school to watch in this race. We think it's those three, but I think Miami is Georgia's biggest competition, and some think it's super, super close between Miami and Georgia heading into this weekend. So if Georgia wants to add him, he commits next week on June 25th. 2 or 3 days after he leaves Athens. Can Georgia get this one done and lock it up before he leaves Athens? That's a big storyline we're watching this weekend.
All right, Dog fans, you talk to Chad and I. You guys are the real experts. Get in the comment section. Who do you guys feel good about? And do you agree with us? Is Georgia just about to go on their run? Let us know. Comment section below.